I was in a shit space. I was desperate to find answers, to heal, to feel better. I took the leap and I committed to a 7-day retreat. One of the biggest intentions that I went in with was to heal from this romantic relationship.
I have had the most challenging trip where what I was going through is I'm losing my...
I wish I had somebody like that after my ayahuasca experience, because once I came back to New York, it was really hard.
It's very clear it was a missed opportunity for me to integrate that properly.
To use plant medicine with your clients.
We're excited to bring you another episode of the Empowered INSEADian. And this is a space where we talk about living a more conscious, aware, and empowered life in a raw and real way as possible. I am Szabi, a mindset and leadership coach, and my fascination with peak performance, human psychology, and the human condition led me to a second career as a coach. So after 16 years in investment and finance world, I started to explore and work with altered states of consciousness, including with sacred plant medicine, about 5 years ago in a variety of settings and regularity. And sacred plants have since then become my greatest teachers in my empowerment journey.
I'm Neha. I am a holistic growth retreats curator. Similar to Szabi, I've had a second career as well. And my love for human connection, well-being, and women's empowerment, combined with my other love for travel, has brought me to curating these global retreats for women leaders after a decade in digital marketing. And my journey with sacred plant medicine started a few years ago, deeply driven by my need for inner connection and personal growth. Szabi and I decided to bring in this specific topic, sacred plant medicine, knowing fully well that it is a bit controversial and unconventional, once probably confined to indigenous cultures. Plant medicine is now emerging as a powerful tool for transformation and leadership, business, healing, self-discovery. The buzz is undeniable, right? From founders and CEOs such as Whole Foods' John McKinney or Tesla's Elon Musk, giving credit to sacred plant medicine like Ayahuasca, Psilocybin, and more. Or Forbes recently published an article that said there's been a 200% increase in interest for plant medicine retreats amongst business professionals. So we see more and more people talking about this subject. The goal is to share with you our personal journeys today and what inspired us to go on this journey. We do want to set some context before we get into the conversation today.
Yeah, I'm left to talk about the boring caveats. We're not medical or legal or shamanic or indigenous experts or promoters of sacred plant medicine or any psychedelics for that matter. We're just normal people who've tried under therapeutic, ceremonial, and spiritual contexts and settings and have had quite unbelievable results. So, sacred plant medicine. Why sacred, first of all? I do not believe the use of sacred plant medicine such as psilocybin or ayahuasca is for entertainment. They were considered sacred by those who have the most experience working with them, indigenous cultures, such as in places like Brazil, Mexico, and Peru. And now I have a lot of experience with it, using it for fun and entertainment, given just how profound the experiences can be. It just feels wrong. That's the approach and perspective I take. Plant medicine itself, what are we talking about here? We wanted to focus on that because that's where Neha and I have more experience to share with you. But just so you know, plant medicine ranges from even fresh mint. Some cultures consider that sacred. It's all about how you use it and the intention with which you use it. Tobacco, same thing. It's a Western society that has commercialized the plant. And there's psilocybin, which is a chemical compound found within so-called magic mushrooms. There's peyote, which is from cactus. There's ibogaine from Africa. And there's ayahuasca produced from a couple of leaves, most typically close to the Amazon around Peru and Brazil. So the focus of an intention of our conversation here is psilocybin and ayahuasca. And you can look up how it's made and where it comes from. But we want to advance and share with you our actual experience. Let me ask you first, Neha, what first drew you to sacred plant medicine? What was your life context that brought this on your radar?
When did it all start? I'd heard about ayahuasca and magic mushrooms from friends many years ago who tried it in the context of healing and self growth, but I didn't really think much of it then. It was like the seed was planted many years ago. And then fast forward to probably like 2021, I'd really started questioning what is my purpose in life, what gives me meaning. And I'd gotten out of a pretty intense relationship as well at that point, and it was the pandemic. Honestly, I was in a shit space. I was desperate. I was desperate to find answers, to heal, to feel better. And a friend suggested that we go to Costa Rica for a fun little trip to explore this beautiful country. The seed blossomed that was planted many years ago. I started looking at, oh, can I club this trip with an ayahuasca retreat, right? What does an ayahuasca retreat include? Is this legal? What am I supposed to expect? And all of that. And that's how I read up a little bit about ayahuasca and that it is legal in Costa Rica and that there were many shamanic healing retreats that were available to participate in. And that's it. It was almost like a deeper calling that I needed to answer. And I took the leap and I committed to a 7-day retreat. And that was my first step towards experimenting and exploring with sacred plant medicine.
You called it a leap. What were you leaping over? What were the specific fears, resistance around it for you?
Yeah, this was a version of me who had never ever tried any psychedelic before or had very little knowledge about what this could do to you. The fear, or I'd say like maybe nervousness, was really around trust, safety. Am I putting myself in danger by doing something like this to myself? Would there be any side effects or would they be irreversible? So that was my real big fear. And the resistance really came from there. And then there's also the social element of, oh, what are people going to think? And there's a little bit of resistance around that, right? Because it's still considered very out there, like very eccentric. So I think these were the things that came up for me while I was trying to take that decision. I took that leap because I'd read up a little bit more. I spoke to the people, the facilitators who were actually curating the retreat, and I read up some testimonials, and then I showed up in the mountains of Costa Rica. And honestly, it was one of the most profound experiences of my life. And I'm glad I took that leap and overcame those fears. What was it like for you? Like, when did your journey start? How did you first encounter sacred plant medicine?
I need to talk about a psychedelic spiritual experience first, because that was my first experience, even though it wasn't from a plant, but from a toad, because that experience is what made me more open to further explorations and experiences into altered states. I tried 5-MeO-DMT, in Latin it's called Bufo alvarius, with a shaman in Mexico, simply because I happened to be there for a personal development retreat that was cognitive and not plant-based. And a friend of mine, few months prior over dinner, just told me a very inspiring, very compelling story. She planted the seed in me, so to speak, of something I've never heard of, never considered doing. And I ended up working with the shaman she recommended. So by the time 2 years later, my romantic partner introduced me to magic mushrooms in a therapeutic and spiritual context, I was much more open to altered states of consciousness.
And as you tried this simply out of curiosity in the beginning, and then you had your romantic partner introducing you, how did you navigate that?
Clearly, there's a leap of faith to be done, just like with anything unknown in life, right? When you join a new job, there's a certain amount of leap of faith. And what do you do when you join a new job? You check people who've been there, worked at the company before. You do as much due diligence as possible, because then you're feeding the mind with information that makes it feel safe. That's all we're trying to do, right? Is reduce the fear, increase safety.
Yeah.
And I had a context that in my personal space, mind, heart, gut feeling at the time just summed up to be enough to make this leap of faith, which was my girlfriend had experience of it before. We did it at home, so it felt like a safe space. She had already tried it from that same batch. Also, by that point, I had informed myself enough about the definition and rigidity of my own mind on drugs, what it means, how the legal world uses the term. Drugs actually covers like a very big spectrum of chemical, natural, healthy, not healthy, whatever you want to label it, a whole bunch.
Yeah.
So I became a bit more mature and nuanced in my own analysis of what I'm willing to be open for and what not for. That also helped diminish that fear.
Yeah. I fully resonate. So yeah, you took the leap and you went ahead and tried it. What was that like?
Taking me back quite a few years, many trips now. The very first one. So it was a very nice introduction. Psilocybin and the magic behind it took it easy on me. I had trips later on where it didn't take it easy on me, and they were very challenging and proportionally rewarding. But this one was, so firstly, you start to get these visuals. Somehow imagery communication enters the mind. And so I was guided to an odyssey into my inner world of feelings. They were mostly, if not all, positive emotions. And through visualizations of friends, places, moments, I was transported to these places and just having very strong feelings.
Right.
So it was almost as if the capacity of my heart was flexing. There were sad moments as well where I felt sorry, so my empathy increased. So I felt strong connectedness to real people in my life, friends, family members, etc. I would describe it as being awakened to the human experience of feeling. I was just not as connected to my emotional body. And this trip gave it a huge boost.
Yeah.
It showed me what's possible. And it woke me up to the realization that everything in life, everything is just how we experience it. And what does that mean? That means how we feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the point of a promotion in my company or that intimate relationship or that holiday or playing with my dog if I don't fully allow myself to be taken over by the felt experience of it? Let's take an extreme example. If you're not in touch with your emotional body at all, nothing has any meaning. Meaning is created from the feelings we feel, which is feedback from our system.
Yeah. And as you speak about feelings, I just want to double click on this because we see this a lot more in men, that you're not really in touch with your feelings. Did this change something in you fundamentally about how you saw the world?
At the time, I would not have had the maturity experience to say so, that yes, it did. On hindsight now, and especially with my interest in human consciousness as a whole and the different bodies, emotional, spiritual, energetic, and more recent interest around the masculine and feminine energies and struggles of men and struggles of women, yes, I very much now connect back. I can say with conviction that yes, I am a man. And as most men on this planet, I have more difficulty to get in touch with my emotional body than women. And to be shown that there's power there. This is strong. These emotions can take you over. Watch what happens when you dial it up. It's almost like psilocybin was showing me, if you dial this up, your life experience is going to change. And then, of course, it's down then to my internalization and integration of that, what I do with it. And we'll get to integration later. For sure, on hindsight, it unlocked the importance of emotions, the importance of connecting to the emotional body.
Yeah. And did it change anything else beyond the feelings and the emotions bit?
My curiosity was fed and grew more around what else is possible. Yeah. Around the magic and mystery of consciousness and human potential and this human experience. That sounds very vague and broad, but essentially, yes, I started to be more questioning about everything, not in a unhelpful, skeptical way, but more in a way of, does that resonate? Is that true? What else is possible? In a very positive, exploratory, curious kind of way. And that continued, and that's just exploded since then. But that for sure made me think, wow, the stories that I believe about the world, about myself, first of all, about others, and the world may not be that true. For your retreat in Costa Rica, were there any difficult moments that you had to navigate.
What I realized once I got there is the way it's designed is zero external stimulation. So that means no phones, no clocks, no books, no music with lyrics, very limited conversation with anybody else out there. And that in itself was super challenging because you're then faced with all this time with yourself and having to go within and look at what's there and start to get comfortable. And obviously it is designed that way because they want to enable that level of self-discovery and connection. The retreat had 3 ayahuasca ceremonies. My experience was, it's hard to explain because some things cannot be experienced, but I'm going to try. It was a purge on all levels. Like physically, I was throwing up quite a lot, and that in itself was challenging for the body. There is a cleanse. Emotionally, I was faced with having to really confront all of the emotions, feelings that I had suppressed for ages. And spiritually, it was about entering a different realm and letting go of ego attachment. And when I say ego attachment, what I mean is letting go of your own identity and what you thought is so true to you. There were moments where the best way I can explain it is like watching TV, and each of the channels on this TV was a chapter in my life. You're dreaming, but you're not. You're awake, but you're not. That's very interesting because also the conscious mind can't fully process everything that you're experiencing. But from what I could process and remember, I'd say like one of the biggest intentions that I went in with was to heal from this romantic relationship that I was in. And I was able to see where I was playing victim. Why is this happening to me? Versus looking at it from a space of, okay, this person came into my life to teach me a lesson. So how can I learn that and let go and look at this from a space of love? What I also felt, uh, like you said, this really intense feeling of connection to everyone and everything around me. It's a state of so much empathy and compassion for everything, including yourself, right? That was so strong. And what I also went through is having to face some feelings of suppressed emotion related to my parents and having to really confront it and work with it and start to see them from a space of so much compassion and forgiveness, right? Then there were bits around purpose and meaning, because again, that was a big theme in my life at that point in time of why am I here? What is my purpose? And it's putting so much pressure. And this experience really helped me realize that there is probably not a purpose for us. And it's not really about the what as much as it is about the how. And what I mean by that is our purpose, I think, as human beings keeps changing as we grow and evolve, right? But the core of it is no matter what you do, to do it from a space of service and love and joy. And you go, you try, you do things. And you see what works for you, but really not to lose the essence of love in everything you do. I'm struggling to really find the words. I was in such a higher state of vibration or energy of believing so deeply in myself and the universe that I felt like anything is possible. This realm of infinite possibilities is just about going and doing and loving and being. That's how my initial ayahuasca experience was like.
Wow. You said you struggled to put it into words. I struggled
Yeah.
to absorb it because you touched on enormous themes, enormous questions, purpose, meaning, parental relationship, huge things within our inner psychology, self-love, self-acceptance, belief. It felt like a laundry list of, of everything, the key things. So how the heck did you do integration of all that?
Yeah, like you said, so much stuff came up. And my best friend through that process was journaling. It's like, write whatever comes up without judgment. A lot of times, consciously, we want to make meaning out of whatever we're feeling or thinking, but it doesn't happen immediately. So, journaling was one of those things that really helped me put it down. And maybe later, when I went back and read it, it made sense then, but not in the moment. So, journaling was huge. There were also a lot of guides and shamans at the retreat who were there to listen to you, help you process things. Just playing the role of a mirror. You're saying things, and sometimes as you say things out loud, you yourself listen to it, and you're like, "Ah, okay, it makes sense, right?"
Saying it out loud makes you remember things and makes you think of new things, like new
Right.
associations of, things click. Yeah, it's fascinating that articulate the experience is
Mhm.
super helpful.
So that was really powerful, having people who didn't judge. What about you? How did integration look like for you?
Some trips I did very well. Some of them I was completely ignorant of the importance of integration. Integration allows these things to settle and for you to really reflect and see, what are you going to do? How are you going to show up in the world? Given the insights you have been fortunate enough to experience with sacred help. So integration, yeah, super important. Actually, one of my friends just qualified to be a psychedelic integration coach.
Yeah, it's hugely needed, right? Because I wish I had somebody like that after my ayahuasca experience. Because once I came back to New York, it was really hard. Like it was so hard to go back to your 9 to 5 and be surrounded by this hustle culture, and everyone's just so like chop chop, like you gotta go, right? I had this like insanely profound experience, and I'd found myself buzzing in this energy of infinite possibilities and stuff. And then you're struggling because nobody around you understands what you went through. So if you're saying people have started working in the space of being psychedelic integration experts, I couldn't agree more when it comes to the need of helping people ease back into society.
I resonate personally with that need because my first psychedelic experience, I didn't integrate. And on hindsight, it was through ignorance.
Yeah.
It's very clear it was a missed opportunity for me to integrate that properly. It's not like I hid it on purpose or I had shame around it. I just didn't know what to do with it. Effectively, I went back into normal mode, peak experience over, like a roller coaster ride. I paid, woohoo, go home, back to the office. Now, I caricature somewhat here.
Yeah.
But consciously, I didn't integrate much. There are recommended practices for integration. You touched on a few already. Slow down is one recommended practice. So don't rush back into all the distractions and stimulations of the normal world. Rest, eat light. Don't do any heavy lifts with your body because your body becomes very tired during a psychedelic and sacred plant experience. So take care of it. Next one is practicing presence and grounding. So just breathing, walks in nature, yoga, or anything to be more in your body, because some people have really powerful out of body experiences or out of this world experiences. So you want to come back. You want your consciousness to feel safe again around the normal environment that it knows. Talking to someone you trust, it's important to share your experience, whether it's someone experienced or an actual therapist or integration coach. And then if challenging emotions arise, whether they're new ones or resurfacing of ones from your peak experience, then really try and treat them with kindness and acceptance, not suppression or fear or running away from it, because it's trying to tell you something, right? All emotions are there to tell us something. There's no such thing as bad emotions. Seek support if all that feels overwhelming. Journaling, I especially resonate with this practice. For me, it's very powerful. It allows like certain energies to leave the body. It forces you to slow down because we write slower than we think. As I'm writing, new things come up that would not have otherwise come up if I'm just thinking about it because I'm thinking too fast. I remember in one challenging trip, I finished around midnight. I was fully back in control, still a little bit high, but I was so blown by the experience I just had. I don't want to lose a tiny morsel of this. And until 4 a.m., I was just typing. So for me, especially powerful integration technique is journaling.
Yeah.
And then just revisiting those insights, which the best way I think is if you've journaled, will reconnect you again with, I was shown this, or this came through.
Yeah.
How am I showing up in real life? Have I integrated this fully or have I forgotten? And then you readjust.
The last one that you mentioned, to revisit the insights that we already have versus jumping into this, oh, now I'm going to go do another ayahuasca retreat, because you're not really like fully processing or integrating what you already know. And you think that just jumping into something else or redoing or recreating the experience is going to solve for it. There is a need to keep going back and looking at what the previous experience has already taught you, rather than do it too often, because then the purpose is lost.
You experience a personal growth and healing, and then you may become so enthused by it that you don't allow enough time to integrate, or you go to the next one. This is not the right way to do it. You're wasting the sacred teacher.
Do you use plant medicine with your clients?
I hesitate to answer this in detail, but I will say that people who I work with are by nature investing in themselves, and the very strong association of sacred plant medicine with personal growth, with healing, with insights, with expansion of consciousness means that, naturally my clients are very much interested. And so depending on the situation, I make a judgment call on what to do, which can range from, no, I don't think you're ready, to potentially yes, and then we discuss how and what format, to I'm not qualified to help you in this. I have recommendations of healers from Mexico to Singapore whose different modalities may be more relevant for you and what you need to work on and your objectives. I listen to their intention and then I guide them to what they then feel is right.
I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you, did you ever have a bad trip? And what was that like?
Yes. I have strong views around this because I see this label of bad trip being thrown around. I believe there's no such thing as a bad trip. There's a bad preparation or bad setting or a bad integration. That does exist. Yeah. It's just a question of ignorance and not being around the right people to guide you around that. When most people talk about bad experience, what they mean is they had a shit time. I have had the most challenging trip where what I was going through is I'm losing my mind forever and not dying. Most of us are. And I think I was especially stuck in the mind. And so that unhealthy addiction to the mind was the lesson, the teaching that in this particular trip was taught to me by having a very visceral, real feeling that I am losing my mind. I genuinely believed that death is much easier than this. At the time, it was very challenging, very scary, because I believe this. This is not some story I'm making up. It's happening in real time. And in the middle of my trip, I asked for help. I called someone. I couldn't believe I had the ability to press my phone. I did that trip by myself. I should say, guys, don't try this alone at home. It's always helpful to have a sitter. Nevertheless, things happen for a reason. It empowered me to ask for help. I was reluctant because I was thinking, I put myself in this situation, and, the lone wolf male mentality. I'm going to get myself out of it. I'm not going to even think about asking for help. But I had trusted someone I could call, and I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I've lost the plot here. I need help. Reflecting on it, I was like, shit, yeah, I don't ask for help often enough. I was like, why not? Why do I think I can do it all? No one can do it all. It empowered me in so many ways. There were about 10 or 15 enormous lessons, only highlighting like 2 that were very powerful. Because the best teaching is always something that you feel. It's not something that you read in a book. An embodied experience, when you believe what's going on, you never forget. It's cell level, entrenched in the body. And so that's why these trips can be so powerful in such a relatively short period of time, which is why some people say, relative to my 10, 15 years of therapy, I'm back to my full self. I feel connected to myself again.
Thanks for sharing that experience. This piece on asking for help, it's such a big element. To have that lesson just hit you so strongly, and embodiment happens at such a core level that there's no more questioning of, is this me or is this not? Super powerful.
How about you? Did you have any challenging trips?
One of the experiences, I was just in physical pain. My stomach was hurting so bad. And I just want this to stop, right? I really just want this to stop. And you have to face it. You have to go through what that process is. And then when I woke up, what they were telling me is, This probably happened because your stomach needed that cleanse. There were probably so many toxins in your stomach that the medicine was working through it. But in that moment, though, when it was happening, no, it wasn't great.
Let me just add to that before we move to the Q&A. Of the range of experiences possible, at the beginning, we started by Neha talking about her very broad and deep, profound experience, and my kind of heart capacity increasing one. And then things that felt worse than death and losing mind. But the range is incredible. I've had ayahuasca trips where absolutely nothing happened. Everyone around me in the ceremonial space with the Peruvian maestras singing the Icaros, very authentic setting. And everyone was having these mind-blowingly profound experiences. And I was twiddling my thumbs a little bit, like, I'm pretty tired and I've taken 4 times the dose of everyone else. So, and there are reasons for this, that sometimes I'll find out. I did find out. And sometimes I didn't. Sometimes that's just the way it is. Equally, I've had experiences where it was purely physiological and I wanted it to end. Bad trip. I basically had food poisoning symptoms. That's it. No spiritual experience. I was just purging in every single hole I have. For 4 hours whilst my partner was having quite a good time. Took the same substance, same leader, same setting. Good to go in with no expectations. Everyone.
Absolutely. Curiosity and no expectations. I think that's a big one. We all probably want to have that deep, profound spiritual experience, but sometimes, nope, it's not happening. And you gotta accept that too. Yeah. We have a second question in the chat, which I quite like, from Broderick. So the question is there such a thing as too much or too often? How would you know if it's all right to go again? And having gone for multiple times, was there ever a risk of being so into the metaphysics of things that it's hard to be motivated to participate in the way the world works today?
Easy question there. You answer that one.
I think it's a great question. Yes, the experience in itself was quite metaphysical and it's taken you to a higher realm. But when I came back to my reality, I felt such a sense of authenticity within myself and knowing myself so much better and deeper that I just needed to make some changes. So, for instance, my career, I knew I had to pivot to do something that's more true to me. But it didn't mean that I was less motivated. If anything, I was more motivated to walk down that path, even with the higher risk, higher uncertainty, higher chance of failure. It just came from such a deep sense of self-belief and trust and knowing that I wasn't removed from the everyday world. If anything, I was much more involved, but with a different energy. To come back to the first part of this question of how much or is too much or too often, I think it's very much a personal decision about being honest with yourself of the insights that you've had from the previous experience. Did you really work through them? If you haven't done the work or you haven't really faced the fears that plant medicine has shown you already and you just want to go back again, thinking that it'll give you something different, that may not always happen. How do you look at it?
There is such a thing as too much, because if you're not integrating, then it's just peak experience. However, it depends on your soul path and what you're here to do and when you're supposed to do it. And that could mean you don't work with one plant medicine and you work with another, or you work with another for a period of time. There's a few elders in the UK, and one of them was saying, for example, he worked with psilocybin for 7 years on a regular cadence. He didn't, let's say, monthly or every 2 months. And then at one point, he just knew that it's enough. That's it. He doesn't need any more. He reached a certain point where he asked himself, am I escaping something? Am I already where I want to be? And then the second part of your question, the risk of being so into the metaphysics of things, that it's hard to be motivated to go back into the old way. Yeah, that can happen. And by the way, this doesn't just happen from sacred plant medicine or psychedelics. You could be doing a spiritual practice that makes you come to this same kind of questioning and conclusion, like, what's the point of being on this planet again and in this incarnation? Just like, what? Like, it's quite tough. here? Suffering's high. It's a fear-based world. What if I check out? And one of my spiritual teachers, for example, did a darkness retreat for 56 days, complete absence of light for 56 days. And he had the same question. I'm not sure I want to go back to 3D life. I was so peaceful there with myself and my meditation.
Yeah.
Now I go out into the world and I optimize everything and I need to achieve, etc. So that's just a little different perspective. I would say if you do feel that way, then ask yourself, why are you even on this planet? You're here to do something. And if you believe that you've incarnated with a certain mission and purpose, that's because you want to. And so wanting to check out is like failing the mission. And you can't complete your mission if you're floating around in the multiverse.
Yeah.
You need to be plugged in to the material 3D planet Earth to be doing what it is you're meant to be doing. It's a whole other question whether you're actually on that path or not. But if you're starting to feel like actually this sucks, then you have a choice. That's it. Check out of this existence. Or you can recognize that you are here for a reason. You're meant to be grounded in making change and impact and sharing your gifts and talents with the world here.
When we start asking ourselves questions around why am I here? What is my reason to be alive? It can be very overwhelming. I think it's important to go on that journey and be patient with yourself and be compassionate to yourself as you try to figure out some of those answers. Once you have that answer, you're going to make the changes. How has your plant medicine journey impacted what you do in your work? It was pretty phenomenal how it impacted me in terms of what I do in my work. Because when I went on this journey, I was working in the digital marketing space, super intense, hardcore corporate world. And this journey helped me realize that it's time for me to move on to my second career path in terms of how I want to serve and how I want to empower. And that's how I started curating and leading the retreats for women leaders that I do today. It's a huge shift. It changed the way how I show up. The first thing is just empathy and compassion at a completely different level, both for whoever shows up at the retreats as well as for myself, as I am going on this completely new entrepreneurial journey. The second is believing in the connection that we all share as human beings, that we're not meant to be here alone, and the sense of holding space for each other, holding each other's hands as we navigate this complex world. And the last bit is be okay with taking more risks and being okay with more uncertainty and not get caught up in this fear of failure or fear of uncertainty or fear of judgment. So overall, really, it has impacted the work I do very profoundly.
So there's two questions left. This is a juicy one. Ben Cott, what makes life meaningful?
Some really deep questions. Why don't you take a stab at it first?
With pleasure. So each individual chooses what meaning to give to our life experience. So it's a choice. It's not because something is meaningful. It's because we choose to give it meaning. Something happens to us and we say, oh, that was great. The same thing happens and a different person will say, oh, that sucks. So we're choosing what meaning to give to the experiences that we have. Now, the broader question of what makes life meaningful, this is a philosophical question on what are your beliefs around why we're here. The story that most resonates with me is that we are here to evolve. We're here to grow and learn in a certain way. And it becomes meaningful if we're on our aligned path as our soul wished when we incarnated into this planet in this space-time reality. So it's a combination of these two things, that it's a choice of every experience that's happening around us, and the sum total of experiences is life. And at the same time, it'll be meaningful if you are aligned with your life mission that your soul set out to do.
That's really beautiful. I wish I went first so I didn't have to follow your things. No. I also believe in the narrative that we are here to evolve and learn and grow as human beings more practically. I quite like the 3 buckets. The first being value. How am I adding value to this world as a human through my work, through how I show up for people? The second is love and relationships. Can I show up in service? And if I do, then my life is meaningful in some way. And then the third is how can I look at moments of suffering or challenges and choose to look at them as lessons versus fall into mentality of being a victim, that this is happening for me and this is happening through me for a larger reason and a larger purpose and my soul's evolution. So I think what makes life meaningful, I would say it's these three things.
Wonderful. And we're out of questions and we're out of time. Thank you, Neha. I enjoyed that.
Me too. Thank you too.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Empowered INSEADian and that it inspired you towards greater life fulfillment and elevated consciousness.
If you have an empowering, raw, and real story to share, please get in touch with us to discuss how we could include it on the show. And finally, if you enjoyed this episode, show us some love by either commenting or hitting the like, subscribe, and share buttons. It supports us more than you know.